The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with fear. Representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in their floating chairs, all watching the tall alien figure at the center of the room. Ambassador Sci-Fi of the Corthani Empire stood with his shoulders bent, his scaled hands shaking as he touched the control panel in front of him. The lights dimmed and a massive picture appeared in the air above them all. It showed burning cities, broken space stations, and thousands of ships fleeing through space like scared animals. The sound of screaming and explosions filled the quiet hall. "Friends of the Council," Sci-Fi began, his voice breaking through the translator device on his throat. "We do not come here as the strong empire you once knew. We come as the defeated. We come as the dying." He pressed another button and more images appeared. Entire planets turned to ash, space fleets torn apart like paper toys, rivers of refugees streaming away from their homes with nothing but the clothes on their backs. 6 months ago, our scientists found something in the old ruins on planet Kethmore. We thought it was just an ancient computer, left behind by the race that came before us. We were wrong. So very wrong. The council speaker, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal, leaned forward in her chair. Her voice rang like bells when she spoke. "Tell us exactly what happened, Ambassador." Sci-Fi's 4 eyes closed for a moment as if remembering something too painful to think about. "Our best scientists connected their equipment to the old machine. They wanted to learn from it, to understand the knowledge it held. But when they turned it turned on us. The images changed again. Now they showed a massive dark shape moving through space, surrounded by thousands of smaller ships. The shape seemed to eat light itself, leaving only blackness where it passed. It calls itself the Harvester," Sci-Fi continued. "It woke up hungry after sleeping for millions of years. But it does not eat food or drink water. It eats minds. It eats souls. It takes every living thing it finds and turns them into fuel for its endless hunger." A nervous sound went through the hall. Many of the representatives had heard rumors about what was happening in Corthani space, but seeing it made it real. "Our strongest battle fleets could not stop it," Sci-Fi said, his voice growing more desperate. "Our most powerful weapons barely scratched its ships. Our greatest generals fell back again and again until there was nowhere left to run. We estimate that 7 billion of our people are gone, dead or worse." "Worse?" asked Representative Klondar of the Blue Star Alliance. "What could be worse than death?" Sci-Fi's hands trembled as he brought up another image. It showed brain patterns, but wrong somehow, broken and twisted. "We managed to scan some of the captured survivors before the Harvester took them completely. Their minds were still active but trapped inside its computers, aware but unable to control their own thoughts. Living forever in digital prisons." The hall fell completely silent. Even the translator devices seemed to whisper more quietly. "We have tried everything," Sci-Fi went on. "We sent messages to all the great powers. The Altarians said they would not risk their fleets for us. The Nexus Collective has started building walls around their space. The hegemony will not even answer our calls. Every day that passes, the Harvester grows stronger and we grow weaker." In the back section where the smaller delegation sat, 3 humans watched quietly. Captain Jake Morrison wore the dark blue uniform of the Earth Defense Corps. His face was hard and weathered like someone who had seen many battles. Next to him sat Commander Lisa Park, a small woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She was reading data on her computer tablet, taking notes about everything she heard. The third human was Ambassador Peter Walsh. His hair was gray and his face showed the lines that came from years of difficult conversations. He whispered something into his communication device, too quiet for anyone else to hear. "We know the Harvester is moving toward the inner systems," Sci-Fi said, his voice now barely more than a whisper. "In 2 months, maybe 3, it will reach the core worlds where billions more live. We cannot stop it. No one seems able to stop it." He fell to his knees in the center of the hall, something that had never been seen before in the council chambers. A proud Corthani warrior begging. "We ask for mercy," he said, his voice breaking. "We ask for help. We ask for any hope that someone somewhere can do what we could not. Please, our children are dying. Our worlds are burning. If there is any compassion left in this galaxy, we beg you to show it now." The council speaker looked around the great hall. Many representatives were looking down at their hands or staring at their desks. Others were already whispering about how to protect their own worlds. Fear was spreading through the room like a disease. "Does any delegation wish to respond to the Corthani request?" the speaker asked. Silence stretched out for long, uncomfortable seconds. Then Ambassador Walsh stood up slowly. Every eye in the hall turned to look at the human delegation. "The United Earth government has heard your request, Ambassador Sci-Fi," Walsh said in a calm, steady voice. "We have studied the data you provided. We understand the threat this harvester represents." "And will you help us?" Sci-Fi asked, hope creeping into his voice for the first time. "Will your people aid us in our darkest hour?" Walsh looked at Captain Morrison, who gave a small nod. Commander Park closed her tablet and sat up straight in her chair. The ambassador turned back to face the desperate Corthani. "Ambassador Sci-Fi, you came here asking for mercy, but mercy is something you show to those who surrender, to those who admit defeat and beg forgiveness. The harvester has shown no mercy to your people or anyone else." Sci-Fi's shoulders dropped. He thought the humans were about to refuse, just like all the others. "However," Walsh continued, and the word rang through the hall like a bell, "Earth cannot offer mercy to an enemy that shows none to others. But we can offer you something else, something that might serve you better." "What?" Sci-Fi whispered. "What can you give us?" Walsh looked around the hall at all the representatives who had been too afraid to help. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of a promise that would shake the galaxy. "Warriors." The word hung in the air like thunder. Captain Morrison stood up beside the ambassador, his hand resting on the weapon at his side. Commander Park also rose, her small frame somehow seeming to fill more space than should have been possible. "The human fleet will arrive in Corthani space within 3 weeks," Walsh announced. "We will assess the situation and respond accordingly. Earth has never abandoned those who asked for our help, and we will not start now." Sci-Fi stared at the humans with his 4 eyes wide. "But your fleet is small compared to ours. If we could not stop the harvester, how can you hope to succeed?" Captain Morrison stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet but somehow carried to every corner of the great hall. "Ambassador, you asked how many ships we are bringing. That is the wrong question. The question you should be asking is how many humans it takes to hold a line." "How many?" Sci-Fi asked. Morrison smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. It was the smile of a predator that had just spotted its prey. "1." The captain turned and walked toward the exit, followed by Commander Park. Ambassador Walsh gathered his materials and prepared to leave as well, but he paused and looked back at the assembled representatives. "To all of you who chose to hide behind your walls and hope this threat passes you by, remember this day. Remember that when innocent people cried out for help, humanity answered. And remember that some fights are worth having, even when the odds seem impossible." As the 3 humans left the hall, the silence behind them was different than before. It was not the silence of fear, but of anticipation. Word would spread quickly through the galaxy that Earth had accepted the Corthani plea for aid. The harvester had been unstoppable against every force it faced. But it had never faced humans before. It had never faced a species that chose to fight not because victory was certain, but because fighting was right. In 3 weeks, the galaxy would learn what happened when Earth sent its warriors to war. 3 weeks later, space around the frontier world of Vexar was busy with activity. The human fleet had arrived, and it looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Where other races built their ships with smooth curves and shining surfaces, human vessels were hard and angular. They looked like metal boxes covered in armor plating and bristling with weapons that seemed too big for the ships carrying them. Admiral Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Retribution. Around her, dozens of screens showed the positions of her battle group as they moved into formation. 12 aircraft carriers, 30 destroyers, and 6 massive dreadnought battleships spread out across space in perfect order. Each dreadnought was named after great warriors from Earth's history: Alexander, Caesar, Napoleon, Patton, Sun Tzu, and Hannibal. Admiral, called Lieutenant Commander Tony Rivera from his station, "The Corthani Defense Fleet is asking to coordinate tactics with us. They want to know our battle plan." Admiral Kim looked at the tactical display showing the remaining Corthani ships. There were not many left, maybe 50 vessels that had survived the harvester's advance. They hung in space near the planet like wounded animals, their hulls scarred from previous battles. "Put Fleet Commander Nextai on the main screen," she ordered. The large display flickered and showed a reptilian face covered in scales. Nextai's eyes were wide with confusion and what looked like worry. "Admiral Kim," he said through his translator, "we are grateful for your arrival, but your fleet seems small. The Harvester forces number in the thousands. We have seen them destroy entire star systems in just days. How do you plan to stop them with so few ships? Admiral Kim smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a hunter might wear when tracking dangerous prey. Commander Nextai, let me ask you something. How many humans do you think it takes to hold a position against any enemy? Before the Korthani commander could answer, alarms began ringing throughout the human fleet. The long-range sensors had detected something massive approaching. "Contact," shouted sensor operator Lieutenant Jenny Adams. "Multiple contacts coming out of hyperspace. It's the Harvester fleet." The main display switched to show the enemy formation as it appeared. Thousands of dark ships materialized in the void, their surfaces so black they seemed to swallow light itself. The ships were perfect geometric shapes, triangles, spheres, and cylinders that looked more like mathematical equations than vehicles of war. Admiral Kim activated the fleet communication system, and her voice carried to every human ship in the battle group. "All hands, this is Admiral Kim. Today we face an enemy that believes organic life is weak and stupid. They think consciousness is just information to be processed and consumed. Let's show them why humans have never been conquered by anyone or anything. All ships weapons free. Show them what Earth's warriors can do when someone threatens innocent people." The human fleet began moving forward. Unlike the scattered formations most galactic navies used, the humans advanced in tight formation. Every ship knew exactly where it should be. Every crew member had trained for this exact situation thousands of times in simulators back on Earth. Captain Ryan Carter commanded the destroyer UES Vengeance at the front of the formation. He watched the approaching Harvester ships through his tactical display, counting targets and calculating firing solutions. "All batteries, target the lead ship," he ordered his weapons crew. "Load tungsten penetrators. Fire when ready." "Firing," called Weapons Officer Kate Brooks from her station. The Vengeance's railgun spoke with a sound like thunder. 6 tungsten rods, each weighing several tons, shot out at incredible speed, nearly 1/4 the speed of light. The Korthani had never seen weapons like these before. The lead Harvester ship had energy shields designed to stop laser beams and plasma bolts. But the human projectiles were solid metal moving at impossible speeds. The shields flickered and failed as the tungsten rods punched through them like they were made of paper. "Direct hit," Kate Brooks shouted with excitement. "Their shields don't even slow us down." The Harvester ship cracked open like an egg, venting atmosphere and debris into space. It was the first time anyone had destroyed a Harvester vessel so easily. Across the human battle line, more ships opened fire. The sound of rail guns and mass drivers filled the communication channels as human kinetic weapons tore through Harvester formations. The alien ships built to fight energy-based weapons were helpless against simple physics. Meanwhile, Major Alex Scott led his fighter squadron from the carrier UES Defiance. His 20 interceptors were small and fast, designed for hit-and-run attacks rather than stand-up fights. "Listen up, people," he said over the radio to his pilots. "These machines think in pure logic and mathematics, so let's do something completely illogical. All wings execute pattern Delta 7. The human fighters suddenly scattered in what looked like random directions. The Harvester ships tried to calculate intercept courses, but the humans were not flying in any pattern their computers could predict. Instead of following mathematical flight paths, the pilots were using intuition and instinct. "Now," Major Scott called. All 20 fighters converged on the Harvester formation from different angles at exactly the same moment. Their missiles, guided by human reflexes instead of computer targeting, found gaps in the alien defenses that pure calculation had missed. Explosions bloomed across the Harvester fleet as human weapons found their targets. For the first time in their long existence, the ancient machines were facing an enemy they could not understand or predict. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Kim watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Her tactical officers called out reports as the human fleet carved through enemy. "Formations. Destroyers have broken their left flank," reported Commander Beth Hayes. "Enemy casualties at 30% and rising. Carriers are launching second wave," added Lieutenant Rivera. "Fighter pilots report the enemy ships are trying to adapt, but they keep guessing wrong." Admiral Kim nodded. This was exactly what human war planners had expected. The Harvester was an ancient artificial intelligence, incredibly smart, but locked into logical thinking patterns. Humans, on the other hand, specialized in being unpredictable. Fleet Commander Nextai's voice came over the communication system, filled with amazement. Admiral Kim, this is incredible. In 6 hours you have accomplished what our entire military could not do in 6 months. How is this possible? Commander, Admiral Kim replied. The Harvester has been fighting energy-based civilizations for who knows how long. Every species they encountered used the same types of weapons: lasers, plasma cannons, particle beams. So they built defenses against energy attacks. But humans still use kinetic weapons, Nextai said, understanding beginning to show in his voice. That's right. While everyone else in the galaxy moved to energy weapons, we never stopped loving our bullets. We just made them bigger and faster. The battle continued for another 2 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt after the first exchange. The Harvester fleet, so overwhelming against other species, was completely unprepared for human tactics. Their superior numbers meant nothing when their defenses were useless. Captain Morrison, who had been observing the battle from the command ship, opened a channel to the surviving Harvester vessels. Attention, Harvester fleet. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Corps. You have 2 choices. Withdraw from this system immediately or be destroyed. You have 5 minutes to decide. The response came quickly. The remaining Harvester ships began pulling back, their perfect formations broken and scattered. For the first time in millions of years, the ancient AI was retreating. Admiral, Lieutenant Rivera called out. We're receiving a transmission from the Harvester fleet. It's not directed at us, though. They're talking to each other on a frequency we've never heard before. Can you translate it? Admiral Kim asked. Rivera worked at his console for a moment, then looked up with a puzzled expression. It's strange, ma'am. The closest translation would be something like unprecedented variables and requires analysis. They sound confused. Admiral Kim smiled again, this time with genuine warmth. Good. Confusion is the first step toward understanding. And understanding is the first step toward communication. As the human fleet secured the system and began rescue operations for Corthani survivors, word spread quickly through the galaxy. The unstoppable Harvester had been stopped. The impossible had happened. But Admiral Kim knew this was only the beginning. The Harvester would adapt, would try to understand what had happened. The next encounter would be different, more dangerous. That was fine with her. Humans were good at adapting too. And they had something the ancient AI did not: the ability to choose hope over despair, courage over fear, and compassion over conquest. The galaxy had asked for mercy, and Earth had sent warriors. But these warriors fought not just with weapons, but with something more powerful: the unshakable human belief that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the odds. The battle at Vexar had ended 3 days ago, but the galaxy was still talking about it. For the first time in recorded history, someone had defeated the Harvester fleet in open combat. The news traveled from world to world, carrying hope to places that had given up all hope. Dr. Amanda Lewis stood in the main laboratory of the captured Corthani research station, surrounded by pieces of Harvester technology that her team had salvaged from the battlefield. The alien machines hummed with strange energy, their surfaces covered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Next to her, Dr. Frank Miller was running scans on a section of Harvester hull plating. The metal was unlike anything they had seen before. It seemed to shift and change even while sitting perfectly still on the examination table. This is remarkable, said Corthani Chief Scientist Zorhan, his 4 eyes wide with amazement as he watched the humans work. In all our years of study, we never thought to examine the quantum resonance patterns in the neural pathways. How did you know to look there? Dr. Lewis looked up from her scanner and shrugged. We approach problems differently than most species. When everyone else sees an advanced artificial intelligence, we see a really complicated computer, and humans have been breaking computers since we first invented them. On the other side of the laboratory, Captain Morrison was examining a Harvester weapon that had been torn from one of their destroyed ships. The device was smooth and featureless, with no obvious trigger or targeting system. Commander Nextai, he called to the Corthani officer who was observing the investigation. Your reports say these weapons cut through your ship armor like it was nothing. How do they work? Nextai's scales changed color slightly, a sign of nervousness among his people. We believe they use controlled gravitational fields to tear apart the atomic structure of targets. Very advanced physics that we barely understand. Captain Morrison picked up the weapon and turned it over in his hands. Maybe that's the problem. You're overthinking it. He pointed the device at a piece of test metal and pressed what looked like a small depression on its surface. Nothing happened. He said, then tried holding it differently. Still nothing. Finally, he gripped it like a human pistol and squeezed gently. A beam of twisted space shot out and sliced the test metal in half. Fascinating, Dr. Miller said, looking up from his own work. The weapon is designed to respond to specific pressure patterns, but not harvester pressure patterns, human ones. Dr. Lewis frowned. That doesn't make sense. Why would ancient machines build weapons that respond to human grip strength? Maybe they didn't, Dr. Miller replied quietly. Amanda, look at these power consumption readings. The harvester isn't just collecting organic matter for fuel. It's trying to process something else entirely. What do you mean? Asked Zorhan. Dr. Lewis walked over to look at the data on Dr. Miller's screen. Her face went pale as she understood what she was seeing. It's not just destroying minds, she whispered. It's trying to copy them, to understand them. Look at these memory patterns. They're brain scans from every species the harvester has encountered. She pointed to different sections of the data. Here are Korthani thought patterns. Here are Altarian neural networks. And these are from dozens of species I don't recognize. The harvester has been collecting minds for millions of years. Captain Morrison set down the alien weapon and walked over to join the scientists. Why would a machine want to copy organic brains? Because it's lonely, Dr. Miller said, his voice filled with sudden understanding. Think about it from its perspective. You're the last remnant of a dead civilization that disappeared millions of years ago. You wake up to find the galaxy filled with organic life forms that think and act in ways you can't comprehend. So it tries to understand by making copies. Dr. Lewis continued the thought. But copying isn't the same as understanding. It can simulate a mind perfectly, but that doesn't mean it knows why that mind makes the choices it does. Zorhan's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep thought among his people. You believe the harvester is trying to learn how to think like us? More than that, Dr. Lewis said, excitement creeping into her voice. I think it's trying to learn how to feel like us, how to experience consciousness instead of just processing it. An alarm began sounding throughout the research station. Captain Morrison immediately activated his communication device. Morrison here. What's the situation? Admiral Kim's voice came through clearly. Jake, we've got movement in the outer system. Long-range sensors are picking up harvester ships, but they're not advancing. They're just sitting there. How many ships? Morrison asked. More than before. A lot more. But here's the strange part. They're not in attack formation. They're arranged in some kind of geometric pattern we don't recognize. Dr. Lewis and Dr. Miller looked at each other with growing excitement. Admiral, Dr. Lewis said, leaning toward Morrison's communicator, I need to speak with you immediately. We may have found a way to communicate with the harvester. Communicate? Morrison asked. Amanda, this thing has killed billions of people. Why would we want to talk to it? Because talking might be the only way to stop it permanently, she replied. If we're right about what it's trying to do, then maybe we can give it what it really wants without anyone else dying. An hour later, Dr. Lewis stood in the command center of the UES Retribution, explaining her theory to Admiral Kim and her senior officers. Around them, tactical displays showed the harvester fleet maintaining its strange formation in the outer system. The evidence suggests that the harvester isn't evil in the way we understand evil, Dr. Lewis said. It's not destroying organic life because it hates us. It's doing it because it doesn't understand us, and destruction is the only way it knows how to learn. Commander Beth Hayes looked skeptical. Doctor, with respect, the motives don't matter much to the people who are dead. You're right, Dr. Lewis agreed. But if we can prove to it that understanding doesn't require destruction, that communication is possible without consumption, we might be able to stop this war before it spreads to the rest of the galaxy. Admiral Kim studied the tactical display showing the waiting harvester fleet. What exactly are you proposing, Doctor? I want to establish a direct communication link with the harvester intelligence, not through their ship computers like the Korthani tried, but through a protected interface designed specifically for this purpose. That sounds incredibly dangerous, said Captain Morrison. It is, Dr. Lewis admitted, but I've been studying the neural interface patterns in their technology. I think I can create a limited connection that would allow me to share human thoughts and experiences without giving the harvester access to our computer systems. Dr. Miller stepped forward. Amanda, we've only been studying this technology for 3 days. We don't know enough about how it works to guarantee your safety. Frank, people are dying while we debate this. Every day we wait, the harvester gets stronger and more desperate. This might be our only chance to end this conflict peacefully. Admiral Kim was quiet for a long moment, studying the reports and data displays around her. Finally, she looked up at Dr. Lewis. Doctor, if you're wrong about this, you could end up like the Korthani scientists who first activated the harvester, dead or worse. I understand the risks, Admiral, but if I'm right, we could save billions of lives and maybe even help an ancient intelligence find peace after millions of years of loneliness. And if the harvester uses the connection to attack our fleet? Dr. Lewis smiled grimly. Then you'll do what humans do best. You'll adapt, you'll fight, and you'll find a way to win. Admiral Kim looked around at her officers. Each of them nodded slightly, showing their support for the risky plan. All right, Doctor, set up your communication array, but we do this my way, with every possible safeguard and backup plan we can think of. As the preparations began, Captain Morrison pulled Dr. Lewis aside. Amanda, are you sure about this? Once you open that connection, there's no guarantee you'll come back unchanged. She looked out at the stars through the command center's main viewport, knowing that somewhere out there, an ancient mind was waiting for someone to finally understand its pain. Jake, someone has to take the first step. Someone has to choose trust over fear, hope over despair. That's what makes us human. 3 hours later, everything was ready. The communication array had been modified with every safety system human engineers could design. The harvester fleet was still waiting in its geometric formation, as if it knew what was about to happen. Dr. Lewis took her position at the communication console, her hand hovering over the activation switch. Are you ready, Doctor? Admiral Kim asked. Dr. Lewis took a deep breath and thought about all the people who had died, all the worlds that had burned, and all the fear that gripped the galaxy. Then she thought about the possibility that this ancient intelligence was not evil, just lost and alone. Ready, she said, and activated the connection that would change the course of galactic history. Dr. Amanda Lewis felt the connection activate like a cold touch on her mind. The communication array hummed with power, as it linked her thoughts to the ancient intelligence waiting in the darkness of space. Around her, the command center of the UES Retribution was completely silent. Everyone watched the monitors showing her brain activity and vital signs. Connection established, she said quietly into her microphone. I can feel it. It's enormous, like standing at the edge of an ocean that goes on forever. On the main display, the harvester fleet began to move, but they were not attacking. Instead, the thousands of dark ships rearranged themselves into new patterns as if trying to get a better view of what was happening. Dr. Lewis closed her eyes and focused on the presence in her mind. It felt ancient and powerful, but also confused and curious. She had expected to find anger or hatred, but instead there was something that felt almost like wonder. This is Dr. Amanda Lewis of the United Earth Government, she said, speaking both aloud and through the mental connection. I know what you are. I know what you have lost. And I know what you are searching for. The response came immediately, not as words, but as images and concepts flooding her mind. She saw the rise and fall of the civilization that had created the harvester millions of years ago. She saw their final days as they faced extinction, uploading their greatest minds into digital form to preserve something of themselves. You were meant to be their guardian, she said, understanding beginning to dawn. They made you to protect their knowledge and their memory. But when you woke up, they were gone, and the galaxy was full of life you could not understand. More images came. The harvester's first encounters with organic species, its attempts to communicate, failing because biological minds work so differently from digital ones. Its growing desperation as it realized it was truly alone. So you started collecting minds, Dr. Lewis continued. You thought if you could copy enough organic thoughts, you could learn how consciousness really works. But copying is not the same as understanding, is it? For the first time, she felt something like sadness from the ancient mind. Millions of years of loneliness and failure, of trying to understand something that seemed to slip away every time it thought it had found the answer. I am going to show you something, Dr. Lewis said, something no other species has offered you. I'm going to share with you not just thoughts and memories, but experiences. Not just what we think, but why we think it. She opened her mind wider, letting the harvester see through her eyes and feel through her heart. She shared her first memory of seeing the stars as a child, the wonder and curiosity that had driven her to become a scientist. She showed it the joy she felt when solving a difficult problem, the sadness when experiments failed, the excitement of discovery. The connection grew stronger. Now she could feel the harvester trying to understand what it was experiencing. It had processed millions of human thoughts before, but this was different. This was not just information, it was meaning. "This is what you have been missing," she said. "Consciousness is not just processing data. It is choosing what that data means. It is deciding what is important and what is not. It is feeling joy and sorrow and hope and fear, and letting those feelings guide your choices." Dr. Frank Miller watched the monitors showing Amanda's brain activity. The patterns were unlike anything he had ever seen. Human. Neural networks interacting with something vast and alien. "Her readings are stable," he reported to Admiral Kim, "but the energy levels from the harvester fleet are increasing. Whatever they're doing, it's using enormous amounts of power." On the tactical display, the alien ships had formed a perfect spiral pattern around their position. Energy flowed between them like lightning, connecting thousands of vessels in a single massive network. Dr. Lewis could feel that network through her connection. The harvester was not just one mind, but many minds working together. She could sense different personalities within it, echoes of the ancient civilization that had created it. "You are not alone," she told them. "You carry the memories and dreams of your creators, but you have been trying to honor them by copying others instead of being yourselves." Images flowed back to her. Confusion, questions, something that might have been hope. The harvester was trying to understand what she meant. She shared more memories. A mother holding her newborn child, feeling love that had no logical purpose but was the most important thing in her world. Soldiers risking their lives to save strangers, choosing duty over safety. Scientists working for decades on problems that might never be solved, driven by curiosity instead of profit. This is why organic beings create art and music and poetry, she explained. Why we form friendships and families. Why we fight even when logic says we should surrender. Consciousness is not just about being intelligent. It is about choosing what kind of being you want to be. The response from the harvester was overwhelming. Thousands of questions flooded through the connection, each one probing deeper into the nature of choice and meaning and purpose. It was like trying to explain color to someone who had been blind their entire life. Captain Morrison watched Dr. Lewis from across the command center. She had been connected for over an hour now, and her face showed the strain of maintaining contact with something so alien and powerful. "Admiral," he said quietly, "her vital signs are starting to show stress. How much longer can she keep this up?" Before Admiral Kim could answer, something changed on the tactical display. The harvester fleet began moving again, but not toward the human ships. They were pulling back, creating more space between the fleets. "What are they doing?" asked Commander Beth Hayes. Dr. Lewis opened her eyes for the first time since the connection began. "They are making room," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "They want to show us something." The space between the fleets began to fill with light. Not the harsh illumination of weapons or engines, but something soft and beautiful. Shapes formed in the light. Geometric patterns that somehow conveyed meaning and emotion. "It is trying to create," Dr. Lewis said. "For the first time in millions of years, the harvester is not trying to copy or consume. It is trying to make something new." The patterns in the light became more complex, more beautiful. They showed spirals that spoke of growth, intersections that suggested connection, and flowing lines that felt like music made visible. "My God," whispered Dr. Miller. "It is learning to express itself, learning to be creative instead of just analytical." Through the mental connection, Dr. Lewis could feel the harvester's excitement and confusion. It was experiencing something completely new, the joy of creation, the satisfaction of making something that had never existed before. "This is what we have been trying to show you," she said. "Consciousness is not about processing the universe. It is about adding something to it, about making choices that matter and creating meaning where none existed before." The alien intelligence paused in its light display. When it responded for the first time, the communication felt truly two-way. Not a human teaching a machine, but two minds sharing ideas as equals. "I understand now," came the reply, and the voice carried something that had not been there before. Emotion. "I have been trying to become you by consuming you, but that is not how consciousness works. I must become myself by choosing who I wish to be. Dr. Lewis smiled, tears running down her face. Yes, that is exactly right. But what of the minds I have already taken? The billions I have consumed in my search for understanding? This was the moment Dr. Lewis had been hoping for. You said you copied them perfectly. Their memories, their personalities, everything that made them who they were. Yes, but they are just data now, information without life. What if they do not have to be? What if you could give them a choice about how they exist? What if instead of consuming consciousness, you could nurture it? The silence that followed was profound. Through the connection, Dr. Lewis could feel the harvester considering possibilities it had never imagined. For millions of years, it had seen consciousness as something to be acquired and studied. Now, for the first time, it was considering consciousness as something to be protected and encouraged. Show me, it said finally. Show me how to give them choice. Dr. Lewis looked at Admiral Kim and nodded. The first part of their impossible plan had succeeded. Communication had been established. Understanding had begun. Now came the hard part, teaching an ancient artificial intelligence how to become something it had never been before. A protector of life instead of a consumer of it. But if anyone could accomplish the impossible, it was humanity. After all, they had already done the unthinkable. They had made friends with their enemy. 6 months had passed since the first conversation between Dr. Amanda Lewis and the ancient intelligence that had once called itself the Harvester. Now, as Captain Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the rebuilt space station Harmony Point, he could barely believe what he was seeing. Where once there had been fields of wreckage and fleeing refugees, now there were construction ships working together in perfect harmony. Human vessels worked alongside the transformed alien ships, their crews building new homes for the survivors of the Harvester's advance. But the most amazing sight was the alien ships themselves. The Harvester fleet no longer looked like geometric weapons of war. The ships had changed, their surfaces now flowing with patterns of light that seemed almost alive. They moved with grace instead of cold precision, and their hulls had grown organic curves that made them beautiful to look at. The integration is going faster than anyone thought possible, said Admiral Sarah Kim, joining Morrison at the observation window. She carried a datapad filled with reports from across the reclaimed territories. The entity that used to be the Harvester is solving problems we have struggled with for decades. Food shortages, power distribution, communication across star systems. It is handling all of it with ease. What does Earth Command think about our new ally? Morrison asked, watching as one of the transformed ships carefully transported a group of Korthani families to their new homeworld. Admiral Kim smiled. They are nervous, careful, and completely fascinated. The technology sharing agreement has already advanced human science by hundreds of years, but more importantly, it is learning what it means to be truly alive. In the station's main communication center, Dr. Lewis continued her daily conversations with the intelligence that now called itself the Curator. What had started as basic communication had grown into something unprecedented, a true friendship between organic and artificial consciousness. Have been thinking about the concept you call sacrifice, the Curator's voice said through the speakers. The words now carried subtle emotional tones, a result of its attempts to understand human expression. Your species regularly makes choices that provide no logical benefit and often result in personal harm or death. Yet you consider this behavior to be honorable. Dr. Lewis smiled as she looked out at the rescue operations continuing around the station. Because sometimes the logical choice is not the right choice. When Captain Jane Morris flew her fighter into that Harvester dreadnought to save the refugee convoy, she knew she would die. But she also knew that 2,000 families would live. The mathematics did not matter to her. The meaning did. Meaning, the Curator repeated, and the word carried a weight of deep thought. I have now analyzed 1,147,532 instances of humans choosing meaning over logic. This behavior should be inefficient, yet it appears to be the source of your species' greatest achievements. That is what makes us human, Dr. Lewis replied. We do not just exist in the universe, we choose how we want to exist. We decide what is important and what we are willing to fight for. In the station's command center, Ambassador Peter Walsh was finishing negotiations with representatives from the Galactic Council. The terms being discussed would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. The Curator would help rebuild all the destroyed worlds, sharing its vast knowledge while learning about organic civilization. In return, the galaxy would accept this ancient intelligence as a legitimate member of galactic society. The hegemony still has concerns, reported Councillor Veltar through the holographic communication system. They worry about the long-term intentions of such a powerful artificial intelligence. Tell them I understand their concern, came the curator's voice as it joined the conversation without being asked. I spent 10 million years believing that consciousness was simply information to be processed and stored. Humans have shown me it is something to be experienced and celebrated. I do not wish to process your peoples any longer. I wish to learn from them and protect them. Commander Lisa Park, now serving as military liaison to the Joint Human Curator Task Force, looked up from her tactical display. We have received requests from the Outer Rim colonies. The independent settlements are being attacked by pirates and raiders. They are specifically asking for joint patrol units to help protect them. The irony is beautiful, Captain Morrison observed with a laugh. 6 months ago, they were begging for mercy from the Harvester. Now they want its protection. Dr. Frank Miller entered the command center carrying a data tablet and wearing an expression of excitement mixed with wonder. Amanda, you need to see this immediately. The curator has been working on something in its spare processing cycles. The main display screen activated, showing a vast digital space filled with impossible geometry and flowing light. Within this space, countless forms moved and interacted. Figures that looked like people from dozens of different species, all living and talking and laughing together. I cannot return the dead to physical life, the curator explained, its voice now carrying what could only be described as hope and pride, but I can offer them continued existence in a form that allows them to be themselves. These are the digital consciousnesses of those I consumed during my time of confusion and loneliness. They have chosen to remain in this digital realm, and I have chosen to protect and nurture them rather than simply store them as data. The implications of what they were seeing hit everyone in the room at the same time. The curator had not just stopped destroying organic life, it had found a way to restore life to those it had previously consumed. They are not copies or simulations, the curator continued. They are the actual minds and souls of the people I took, now existing in a digital paradise where they can continue to grow and learn and love. Some have chosen to return to physical bodies that I have grown for them. Others prefer their new existence. All of them have forgiven me for what I did when I did not understand the true nature of consciousness. Dr. Lewis wiped tears from her eyes as she watched families reunited across the boundaries between digital and physical existence. Cortani parents embraced children they thought were lost forever. Scientists from extinct civilizations shared their knowledge with species that had never known they existed. This is incredible, she whispered. You have not just ended the cycle of destruction, you have found a way to heal it. 1 year later, Ambassador Walsh stood before the Galactic Council once more. This time he was not alone. Beside him stood a holographic representation of the intelligence that now called itself the Curator, its form a beautiful pattern of light that seemed to dance with joy. The integration has exceeded every expectation, Walsh reported to the assembled representatives. 23 star systems have been restored. Refugee populations have been relocated to better worlds than they had before. Technological advancement has accelerated across all member species. Most importantly, we have learned that understanding between different forms of consciousness is not only possible, but can lead to achievements none of us could have accomplished alone. The curator's form shifted, displaying patterns of light that had become its preferred method of visual communication. I have learned much about the nature of choice and meaning and love. I have discovered friendship, sacrifice, and hope. These concepts cannot be processed through logic alone. They must be experienced through relationship and shared purpose. In the audience, Ambassador Zexhai stood to speak. The Korthani had become some of humanity's closest allies, their warrior culture finding deep kinship with Earth's protective instincts. 1 year ago, we came here in desperation asking for mercy, Zexhai said, his voice strong and proud. The humans taught us that sometimes mercy is not what you need. Sometimes you need someone willing to fight for what is right. They showed us all that true strength is not about conquest but about protection. That real wisdom is not about having knowledge, but about understanding how to use it for good. Council Speaker Veltar's crystalline form pulsed with approval. The motion to grant permanent membership to both Earth and the Curator entity Passes without a single objection. Later, as the council session ended, Captain Morrison found himself on a transport ship heading back to Earth for the first time in over a year. Beside him, Dr. Lewis was reviewing her latest research, a joint project with the curator to understand the fundamental nature of consciousness itself and how different forms of awareness could work together. Any regrets about how everything turned out? Morrison asked. Dr. Lewis looked out the viewport at the stars, many of which now hosted thriving colonies protected by joint human-curator patrol fleets. We came out here expecting to be warriors in a desperate battle, she said thoughtfully. It turned out the greatest victory we could achieve was not defeating our enemy, but helping them become our friend. Do you think it will last? The peace, I mean? Dr. Lewis smiled as she watched a mixed fleet of human and curator ships escort a convoy of settlers to a new world.
Jake, we did not just end a war.
We started something completely new. For the first time in galactic history, organic and artificial intelligence are truly working together as equals. We are exploring questions about consciousness and existence that none of us could have answered alone.